Yeah, we're just going to talk about biomimicry for regenerative design, which we call BIRD, and I'll just call it BIRD because it's less of a mouthful, and look at it as the BIRD Lab at Green School Bali. I'm Benjamin Freud. I'm the head of upper school at Green School Bali, the strategic lead for regenerative education there. I founded Coconut Thinking. If you guys ever want to check that out, we've got a podcast, we've got a blog. We just do various things to support with schools in terms of their journeys towards sustainability and regeneration. Um, and I have come in this space from having had multiple, lived in different places around the world and started off in consulting. And maybe around 2018, 2019, I kind of got concerned with this whole ecological breakdown thing and thinking that maybe we might want to do something. And my entry point to respond to that is education. Um, and from this idea of working in biomimicry, I'm a historian. I'm not a scientist. I'm not somebody who goes into the field and knows all this weird stuff about animals. But I understand that regenerative design is a different way of approaching things. And what I love about this is that it's a community piece. It's not something that's done by an individual. It's bringing in all the voices from the human world, from the other than human world together in order to learn together. And so I'm not worried that I don't know all the science stuff because I can always find out and we can always enter conversations. But the regenerative design piece here is a pedagogical approach. It's a way to engage learners in different ways as they go do things because ultimately we're all designers. Even if we design a kid's birthday party, we're all designers. And that's really the approach that we want to have. So we started off thinking about this question, like, do we want to prepare kids for a future that no longer exists or a present and futures that are emergent? And I don't need to give you the speech about like schools aren't fit for purpose and all that stuff. You know this. Like, we don't need to go through this. But one thing that we don't always quite realize or necessarily think about is that a kindy today, someone who enters kindergarten, will graduate high school in 2038 and university in 2042. Someone born in 2020 will graduate high school in 2038. And we're talking about the year 2030 like it's really far away. But then we have these kids who come in kindergarten in 2042. We can't imagine what that world might look like. And I'm willing to bet that with the advances in biotech, these kindies who are born in 2020 might probably see, it wouldn't be crazy to think that they might see the year 2150. And their children certainly might live into the 23rd century. That's not completely crazy if you think about some of the advances that we have. So we're looking at thinking about how we might respond with the planet, with other life forms in ways that make it so that we can look at these longer horizons. Talk about BIRD. I'm just going to zip through this. Biomimicry, practice of learning from nature's designs and strategies. Nature is perfect because nature always adapts. Nature is imperfect because it continues to adapt. And that's really important when we think about what learners might want to do and the skills that are necessary and the dispositions that are necessary to adapt. Always adapting, always sensing what the world is asking for, calling for, and asking of us. And regenerative design, I mean, I'm just going to put in this definition. I don't really like definitions, but it's just an anchor here. Transformation in terms of through making, but specifically, it's about being witnessed in terms of the evolving quality of relationships. Witnessed in the evolving quality of relationships is a fancy way of saying that actually we're in it, and it's a relational experience. It's not about doing a product. The product doesn't matter. And so this is a response to design thinking, which is all about like, yeah, let's understand the user, let's define the problem, let's get it out there. But what design thinking fails to do is it fails to situate us. We are understanding the user, but we're not thinking about how we are also participants in that experience. And it's very much output oriented, whereas regenerative design is about the quality of relationships, and that's not linear and that's not time bound. So I just want to kind of highlight that. Um, I also want to say very quickly, sustainability and regeneration, they sit alongside one another. It's not sustainability or regeneration. And we can have a longer conversation about this, but I just want to signpost these things so that we understand that sustainability is really important in terms of making sure that, we're carbon zero and all that stuff. But the regenerative part is about the relationships. So the Biomimicry for Design Lab, this is not the real thing. It's probably AI generated, and this is what it might look like. It's going to be an amazing building. It's being built currently. The building itself has walls. Now, Green School Bali doesn't have walls, but the building itself will have walls. It's compressed rice straw, so that we buy the rice straw off of the farmers who usually burn it and compress it into these bricks that are not just light, but they're insulating, fireproof, and also suck in carbon. So that's really a cool feature. On top of it, you might be able to see here on top of the roof, it's a green roof. So that's a learning space where 5 learners can go up there, and we're going to grow flowers, and we're going to grow herbs and things like that so that they can use. It's kind of like its own garden, but also a place where the fireflies might come back, we hope, where the bees might come back. So it's a learning space and a place that also regenerates the insect population in our area at Green School. And even the foundation is out of limecrete, so it's not the concrete that is pretty terrible in terms of emitting 1 ton of carbon dioxide for every ton of concrete. So the building itself is also thinking about the environment in which it is. And it's going to have, I'm just going to go very quickly so you can imagine the space, and we'll go over the pedagogy. It's got 3 spaces. It's got a systems studio or living systems studio, which will be more your traditional classroom, a biomaterials lab, which is a maker space that works with organic materials. We've got an elemental lab, which is a chemistry place, but really looking at what we might do with living matter. So the space, and then an amphitheater, which is really important in terms of sort of the storytelling that's there. So you can start to kind of imagine, if we go from here to hear what that might look like in a school. But the beautiful thing is that while these have names like Living Systems Studio and Biomaterials Lab, this can be done pretty much in any school, so long as you're willing to work with organic materials. A maker space is a maker space. A chem lab is a chem lab. These are just specific for our purposes. And then the question is, why biomimicry? Like, what's going on with biomimicry? It's the biomimicry for regenerative design lab. Biomimicry is the entry point, but really we're looking at regenerative design. And the reason is, as I was saying earlier, nature is perfect. But in another way of saying that is it's optimized. It's designed for what's already happened because it adapts based on what's happening. And so that's actually wonderful to be able to sense what's adapting now, and able to evolve and work through different iterations, and work also not just by oneself, but in terms of the relationships that we have. Nothing in the world exists independently. It's all relational. And this is why biomimicry is so important, because then we can start to understand how that matters. And that takes us beyond sustainability, which is usually about numbers and efficiency. And there's a management side to sustainability that's wonderful and needed, but it doesn't work on the relationships. And so the idea here is for young people to recognize the patterns and prepare like nature, understand how nature works, how it's adapted, how it's adapting, how it's transformative, and start to think about some of those complexities that nature goes through whenever it goes through transformative experiences, which is, by the way, all the time, because nothing ever stops in nature. It's dynamic. And so the regenerative design approach, it's not a model, it's not a framework, it's not really even a process, it's an approach. And if you think about an approach, there's an encounter piece to it. So as I approach someone, or as I approach something, I'm coming at it with myself, and I am approaching it, and we're having an encounter. I'm coming closer. And that's different from a model or a framework, which you can take in different places. Models aren't regenerative. They are part of that idea of standardization and being able to replicate. But regenerative design asks us to think about who is in place, who are the living creatures that are around, what does the landscape look like, what does the history of the space look like. It asks us every time to find uniqueness in the moment and respond accordingly. So it's an approach. It's a way to do things, but it always will be unique. And so the regenerative design is good for any learner. Like if you're 55, or 105, and if you, again, you design birthday parties, you can do this. And this is what's so exciting. Because really we're looking at nature as model, measure, and mentor, which is what the Biomimicry organization says, and this is what we want. We're just thinking about how nature works, and looking at the qualities that are involved. On the right, you'll see some paintings of what the biomimicry for regenerative design lab will look like. Um, Regenerative design principles, low threshold, wide walls, no ceiling. You can do this in kindergarten. You can do this at post-PhD research level. It doesn't matter. There's always a piece of complexity. And that's super exciting because it never stops. It's never complete. It's not that there's always an iteration or a reiteration. It's just that we can always make it more complex. And it's always about, and this is important, asking questions. It's not about the answers. And fundamentally, if there's one thing that I would ask or hope that you take away from this, is that regeneration is just like doing things like nature does things. And that's it. It's that simple. It's not about healing, it's not about restoring, because nature also does those things, but it does other things. It composts, it decays, things die, and that's okay because nature works in cycles and we do things like nature does. So I'm going to walk you through a case study here that we did in high school, but you guys can do this anywhere. So don't worry about the fact that it's high school. And we're going to pretend that we're doing this, the regenerative design, and you'll see how incredibly easy it is, and yet how much complexity is involved here. So this is a case study. Oh, we're going to skip this one actually. So usually in a lot of design thinking, we have one question. You ask a problem, we have one question, we need to do this. And then you go through this idea of like convergent, divergent, thinking, we go different, we map it out, then we come back and we end up with like one answer or solution. And that tends to be a lot of the models. And with design thinking, this is a big thing. But with regenerative design, you ask a regenerative question. So rather than coming up with a problem, you ask a big question that asks more questions. So one question from which you can go off and get a whole bunch of different questions. And if you're in the IB, the PYP does this fantastically. What are some of the things that we might ask that just spark more questions so that you always have one more question than you do have answers? Because if you stop asking questions, you stop learning. And so you can go divergent, but you can also go a whole bunch of different ways. You can go anywhere in terms of the regenerative design piece, and we don't know. And this is what's absolutely beautiful about it, is that if you're working on something like, let's say you're learning about, you don't learn about bees, you learn with bees, you just learn there and see where the questions take you, see where the learners take you, see where the experience takes you in this moment. So all you got to know is these 4 words: sensing, seeking, shaping, and storytelling. That's it. And it's non-linear. I know in this little picture here, it looks like it's linear, but if you look very closely, there's like dotted lines that take us anywhere. And you could be in storytelling and sensing at the same time. And you can go from shaping to seeking back to storytelling. It's completely meant to be non-linear. And these are kind of the definitions that we have. We've tried to make them so that grade 3s can understand, or at least lower school students, so that you put it on a bumper sticker or whatever it might be: sensing, seeking, shaping, and storytelling. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is we're going to pretend that we're going to do like this 5-minute design challenge that could probably take a whole term long. Yeah. So we're just going to pretend. So let's say you guys are learners, we have a class, and I'm asking you to design a space where primary school age children can learn and play. That's it. That's what you're doing. That's your brief. So how might you use regenerative design to do this? And how might you look at nature for some of these ideas? So in 5 minutes, we're going to do something that maybe could take us, 5 weeks or 5 months, but stick with me. So we're going to do step by step. The first part is sensing. And this is where we start to ask, how might we learn from listening to many voices? And what are these voices calling for? I'm not asking what do these voices need. I'm asking what are they calling for? And when I say the many voices, I mean the human and other than human world. So it takes a little bit of playing around with what this might be. When we sense, we taste, we touch, we hear, we see, we do all of those things, but we also enter in conversation and we get a feeling for what's out there because we are listening to the many voices and we have conversations with that. So what does this look like? So in our design challenge, let's just say you're in Green School Bali, you're in Bali, okay? But you can do this from anywhere. We're going to play a game and it's called Council of All Beings. And we're going to work together. We're going to pretend we're going to work together, and everybody's going to take one of these roles. So it's a learning and play space for lower school. So someone's going to take the role of a student in grade 2, someone a teacher in grade 4. Someone might want to be a gecko in the school, a groundskeeper. What about a coconut tree or the ocean? Or we might think in terms of time. What might a Balinese child in 2125, what might they be calling for in this learning and playing space? What might a firefly in 2050 be calling for this space? So the idea here is to go into a conversation of what that might be. So a coconut tree, for instance, might say, look, it's fantastic you guys are playing. I want little kids to walk up, climb me, but I also want to make sure that the soil is healthy. I also want to make sure that I have access to water. A gecko might say, I need to be able to eat bugs and I need to be safe. And I need to be able to go on this learning and playing space. I'm deliberately not calling it a playground, by the way. This learning and playing space in order to kind of live and be safe and be free and be cool. A groundskeeper might say, I just need this thing to be easy to clean. And maybe it just comes down to that. So we understand we have these conversations about what these life forms, human and other than human, now in the past and in the future, might be calling for when it comes to this play space. So that the ocean might say, don't pollute me with plastics. Make sure that all the materials are compostable, those kinds of questions. And then we start thinking about what that looks like in terms of the questions that we might ask. When we have all these conversations, we take notes, then we just write down what are the questions that matter. What are the questions that matter? So you might, after having a conversation between a coconut tree, a firefly, a grade 2 student, and a parent, the question might be, how might we design a space that allows for all living creatures to live and play in harmony? I don't know, I'm making it up, but you understand, that might be the question. Now, the beautiful thing is that that would be specific for where we are now at Green School Bali but this is a question that can be asked anywhere. But that question won't have the same response if it's in Bali or Tokyo or Jakarta or Moscow or anywhere like that. But the question stays the same. How might we create a learning and playing space where everyone can play in harmony? And so these are your big questions. What might they guide you? This is what you're working with. You had a conversation, and you're asking those big questions. And then we're working in terms of what might nature's design be like. So in a playing and learning space, there's going to be this idea that all animals are able to go there, right? And that the materials are able to be compostable in the soil. That water, if nature is designing it, water is going to be clean. And there's going to be maybe some food to eat for all living creatures. And there's going to be some areas that are kind of maybe a little bit, rocky or a little bit soft, but probably we're going to be in a place where all animals that live there are going to be somehow safe. There might be shade. There might be different ways to think about how the fireflies are. So what are some of these learning and playing spaces that might make sense? Maybe the tactile experiences might be different. Those are the kinds of things that we might look at from our big question, which is how might they learn and play in harmony? How might we make sure that a 7-year-old isn't going to injure the gecko and the gecko is not going to maybe freak out the 7-year-old? We don't need to go through this, but it's just to show you. I put it in gray so that you know that there's like a whole biomimicry design spiral, and that this part, it can really get quite technical, but you can see that we don't even need this to start playing with these possibilities. And lastly, and this is the really cool part, is the storytelling. How might we learn and inspire others? So we just designed a playground. It's got like a beautiful water feature there. It's all safe. We have like we have geckos playing. We've got a coconut tree that gets to eat or drink healthy water. We've got the soil that's got little worms that are all safe. Kids who are having fun. Parents who feel safe. Teachers who are able to kind of see everything that's going on. We designed this beautiful playground, and now we're going to tell the world about it. We're going to tell our friends. We're going to get on webinars. We're going to put it out there. We're going to tell the world about it, and they're going to be inspired, and they're going to do the same thing, and they're going to tell the world about it, and then we're going to be inspired from them. If you think about how this might play out in terms of what a traditional curriculum might look like, we are asking big questions. We are engaging in critical thinking. We are thinking in terms of shapes and spaces and the natural world, and maybe some social studies if we're thinking about what a Balinese child in 2025 might want, or 2125 or 1925. We're looking in terms of language, potentially. We're looking in terms of all of those things. We're writing about it through storytelling, or we're making videos or podcasts. All of the traditional disciplines can be woven in here because there's opportunities everywhere to make it come out. But now they have something and a reason to tell those stories. Now they have a reason to understand area or distance, or what composting might mean, or what culture might look like for a Balinese child, or anything like that. Or maybe even just understand when we're thinking about materials, understand supply chains. All of these things are important. So this is, we're really asking the question, why is your story worth telling? If your story is not worth telling, we have a problem. This is kind of a check there. And how will it live on? Because that's what's regenerative about it. So I'm going to put an end to this. Like you guys can see a little bit where we're coming from, and Bird is here. There is a curriculum. There is an approach here that's there. And I just want to say it doesn't have to be just in the jungle where Bali is, or Green School. It could be anywhere. It could be in the most urban jungle possible, because it's about asking the questions from everyone in the community, human and other than human, and what might we design with those voices in mind, currently and in the future. And that changes things drastically from just doing design thinking where we can make a phone, not asking the question, well, what happens afterwards? What does the soil ask of a phone is different in regenerative design than it is in, say, design thinking. And that's it. So that's a really, really quick rundown of what we're looking at. And I'm hoping that they'll help us generate some more questions. And I'm just going to leave it at that if there's anything that kind of resonated with you.